What's going on, guys? It's your boy Richie Miller here, and I'm coming back at you with a tutorial on mixing drums, particularly the kick, snare, and the hats. So I had a question asked to me by one of my friends. How do I get my drums to be punchier? I'm having trouble with my hi-hats coming through in the mix. So we're gonna go through all of that and more. So stick around and take a listen. So check it out, guys. I have a loop going. I'm gonna play the loop without any effects so you can see where I'm starting. Very cool. So let's go first few the kick drum. I'll show you how you guys can process your kick drums. Now think about a kick drum. What it's there for is for a transient. All these are kind of transient bass instruments, I guess you'd call them. Sounds, transient bass sounds. So they kind of lend themselves to being treated with a transient designer. First of all, I use the, excuse me, I got also my retainer in, you know, so excuse me if I'm talking a little funny today, but if you guys don't have the SPL transient designer, check it out. There's also a Native Instruments one that works well as well. And what I would do with this plugin is just finesse the attack. If you can see, if I back it off all the way, all of a sudden the attack on my kick drum goes away, and if I raise it up, it sounds a lot punchier. So that's great, and that makes it stand out on small speakers a lot. This is a great plugin, highly recommended. And if you check it out, you'll see on here, I'm still not, my mix is still where it is. It's not changing where my mix is. I still don't want to clip in the red on my master bus. I don't want to clip my channel, especially because it's not grouped. I can't manage my drums. If I had a drum group and I wasn't clipping my drum group, then that's fine, that's another thing. But since this is on its own, it's in the channel, it's going right to my master bus. I especially don't want it to clip. So using the transient designer is something I'll do often. If you're having trouble keeping that kind of where it is, you can always put a limiter on there so it doesn't raise past where you have your limiter, of course. And that's a great place to start. Now we can kind of look at EQ. EQ is something pretty much doing all my drums. There's a few things particularly to look at when you're EQing a kick drum. One is the low cut bass. In case you want your bass to kind of take up most of the low end of your track, you might want to do a high pass on here. Did I say low pass? I meant high pass. Even if you have this at the lowest setting here in Ableton on the stock EQ, you're gonna get an effect off it, and it's not great some of the time. So most of the time I'll just leave that out. I don't mind having the kick kind of occupy the same range as the bass, as long as I manage it well. Now the kind of punch, the kind of oomph for the kick drum is around 100 hertz. So we can go ahead and listen to this EQ band here. And you can play with that and kind of find a place where your kick drum kind of sits well in the track and have a boost in that area. And if you have a really dense mix, you might want more kind of like top end, more of the click in the beginning, and a simple kind of high shelf will do that for you. So those are the kind of things I look for when I'm EQing. Rarely do I ever need to make cuts because I'm picking samples that sound good to begin with, so I'm not trying to like do much like surgery on these. I'm really just trying to either highlight some bass frequencies that I like, or I'm trying to get the transient to come through more in the mix by making a high shelf. That's really about it. Let's get to a place where we sound good. Sure, sounds fine. And that's with the transient designer. And now I'm gonna bypass both of the things and show you another thing. And really what I'm looking for all these, they're all the same. There's a few things we can do for drums. It's compression, limiting, EQ, and transient design. Those are the 4 things that are used to mix drums, particularly for the genre of music that I make. And those are the kind of things I'm looking for. And we'll try some of these out. Sometimes I don't use any. Sometimes I use maybe all of them. Sometimes I use half of them. I don't freaking know. But this is the Renaissance Axe compressor. It really will destroy your sound, but in a great, fabulous way. So let's check out what this does. Might help if I enable it. Okay, great. So you can hear how that's much louder now. And I'm not at all increasing my peaks on my meters. So that's a great way to get your drums to sound louder without increasing your peaks. This is obviously just a compressor. It might have a limiter feature built in because it's not raising my peak level on my channel at all. And that's great. So with everything that I have here, now you might not like this EQ soloed, but in the mix, it'll help bring the kick drum through if it's really dense. You might not need that. Kind of like it without the EQ if it's just soloed like this. Cool. That's how I would kind of take care of my my kick drum. You can throw a limiter on there if it's if you're having trouble with peaks. Looks like I'm fine here without it. Now let's move on to the snare. For snare EQ, you may need a high pass to cut out some of the bass. I kind of like leaving it off and having that kind of bass in there. But one of the key kind of frequencies is around the 200 hertz area. You can hear that they just brought out the snare like crazy. If you want a really big boomy kind of dubstep snare or kind of like an EDM snare, Skrillex style, there you go. You'd stack a few, like an 808 in a tom or some crap snare and boost the 200 hertz of the tom, and you got a Skrillex snare right there. So check that out. That's pretty much maybe the only EQ that I would touch with that. And then I do the same exact thing, man. It's just transient designer. And that's it. And you can also mess with the Renaissance Axe if you want, a limiter if you need one. I don't limit my drums very often, if ever, but if you need one. Also, I wanted to demonstrate this plugin for you guys. It's called a Rough Rider. It's just a compressor that just pretty much destroys your snares. But if you want like a really heavy EDM kind of snare, it could maybe do something good for you. It's kind of like maybe a house snare kind of feel. That's one thing you can check out if you want that kind of sound. And that's pretty much it for my snares, man. Really, like I'm just trying to maintain a good balance between my kick and my snare drum without peaking, with staying at a good place in my meters. Now for the hi-hats. Particularly, you asked about the hi-hats. And I'm gonna be honest, man. I do nothing to my hi-hats. The only thing I'll ever probably do to my hi-hats is balance them well in the mix and EQ them, because you can see like some of these hi-hats have bass frequencies for some reason, sub. I hate that. If I hear my hats coming through my subwoofer, I'm not very happy. I cut that out, and if I need a little bit more shine, I'll boost a little bit past 10K with a high shelf. And that's probably everything that I would do. So here we are now with the loop. Let's go ahead and try some compression on the snare. Cool. Much louder than we were before. And we're still sounding good. Of course, same thing on the hi-hats, man. If you need more hi-hats, man, Transient Designer, if you need more click, Renaissance Axe, or any other compressor to be specific, you don't have to use the Axe. The Axe just sounds kind of nice. It has a particular quality to it. You can hear it in this loop here that it's got a character to it. So each compressor kind of has a character. The Renaissance Axe has a particular character, and it kind of sounds nice, especially for the genre of music that I do. If you really just need no character at all, you can of course just use a limiter. Set the ceiling to where you need in the mix. And I just raise the level of the hi-hats without increasing my peaks at all. I don't really like that because you can hear some flamming in there. But you know, it is what it is. It's louder. You want it louder? It's louder. Now, one thing I gotta address, man, that you might not be aware of is this. You have a specific amount of range here on the meter, space in your mix. You have from the bottom to 0, and that's it. That's your space. Nothing more can fit in there. You have a frequency range, and if things are clouding your other frequencies, you're gonna have muffled drums. So I'm gonna demonstrate that right now for you. Right now you can hear my kick, snare, and hi-hat very well. Look what happens if I bring up this synth too high. All of a sudden, you can't hear my drums at all. And it's because I have a certain amount of frequency space here, and the synth is taking all of it, and it's masking my drums. So you gotta be very careful if you don't want your drums to be masked. You want punchy drums, don't cover it up too much with other shit. There's things you can do to remedy that, like an EQ, and you can go in, if my kick is, if I boosted 100 on my kick, maybe I'll cut 100 on this. Or if I boosted 200 on my snare, maybe I'll cut around 200 on here. And maybe I can push the levels a little bit more than I would if I hadn't done that. And that's not the only thing. If you're stacking synths, that's the same exact thing. If you have two synths that are stacking over in the same frequency range, you're gonna get mud, you're gonna get cloudy, and you're gonna reduce the clarity of your mix. So keep that in mind, and be aware that that could happen to you. The last thing that I want to show you is parallel compression. Now, for parallel compression on drums, I use the DBX 160. It's a very popular compressor for parallel compression specifically on drums. And the idea behind that is you have a bus, it sends to a compressor. The compressor compresses the crap out of the whatever you send to it, and then you bring that up in the mix, and it'll kind of enhance the RMS. It'll enhance the transients, the clarity. It'll kind of bring it more forward in the mix. And that can be great. So let's send the kick drum to it. Solo it. Now my kick drum's already compressed with the Renaissance axe. Maybe you want that not to affect this compressor. So in Ableton, you can set whether or not your buses are post or pre your effects. Let's do pre. Let's try that. As you can see, I'm getting a lot of gain reduction here. You can hear really the snappiness of the kick. It's compressing a little bit too much there. On the threshold, you can see as I bring the threshold down, I'm getting more of the snap. Bring the threshold up, you can start hearing more of the kick drum. I mean, it's sounding pretty punchy. That's great. So if you're not getting enough levels to hear, you can adjust the input knob to get more compression. This is plenty how it is. And now let's mix that in with the kick drum we already have. Cool. Now we're kind of maintaining our peaks. We're not peaking too much here. We're still at -5 on my kick drum, and we're pretty punchy. Let's bypass that. See how it sounds. It's not doing too much right now. Maybe we can exaggerate it. Okay, here's without it. There's with it. Cool. That's bringing it a lot more forward in the mix. Now you can send multiple things to this. We can send our snare to this as well. That's without it. That's with it. Boom, louder. Now, you know what I do for my parallel compression on drums, DBX 160. You know what kind of transient designers, EQ, limiting, and compression you can do on your buses. Let's go over sidechain compression on your instruments. I will use this on either my instrument bus or my 808, my bass. You can use it on bass, you can use it on your instruments. What this is going to do is whenever my kick hits, it's going to duck down my instrument level. Now I can push the level of this instrument a little bit more, and my kick drum will still come through quite nicely. Cool. Very good. That's pretty much it, man. There's your little drum workshop. That's everything you really need to know. Now this is everything. I mean, when I do my mixes, man, maybe I'll throw some EQ on there. Maybe I'll do a little bit of transient designing. But I really don't, you don't need to overdo it, man. You don't need to do it with the stuff. Just do whatever sounds good to you. I think what I showed you sounds pretty good. We can do a quick before and after and see what are the effects of what we did. That's without. Let's go ahead and turn all these things on. And here's your after. Now, of course, that's an exaggeration. Those drums are absurdly punchy and grotesque, and I don't like them how they are, but you're gonna do this to taste, man, to taste to the track. These are the things you need to know. Now you can use them in a more sophisticated and more thought out kind of way. Cool, there you go. Boom. Drum 101, man. Hope you enjoyed it. Check back for some more tutorials on my channel. Make sure you drop a like, comment, and subscribe if you like what you're seeing. And I look forward to showing you guys some more mix, mastering, and production tricks in the future. Thanks for watching.